Hello, how are you?
Hi, my friend. It's so good to see you.
Yes.
So great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to share space with you. So, welcome to season 2 of Cosmic Waves. The theme of this season is 2025 as a threshold year. And our episode theme is the liminal space, navigating endings, transitions, and thresholds. So, for you in the audience, have you ever felt like nothing quite fits anymore, but the new hasn't arrived yet? You're not broken, you're not alone, you're in a liminal space. But, Deborah, what is the liminal space?
I thought that the very first time I ever heard anybody refer to it. People in a lot of astrologers use it. Liminal, being in a liminal space just simply means being in the space in between. You're not really here or there. A really interesting analogy, just a physical analogy, is imagine you are walking on a bridge from one shore or one spot, one side of the canyon or one side of the river or street over street, from one side to the other. While you're on the bridge, you're physically existing. You are someplace, but you are neither where you're neither on the side that you left, the shore that you left, or the side that you landed on. You're in the space in between. So you're there and it's like you're aware of where you've been and you have a sense of where you're going, but you're not really in either space. And it can be a very sort of ungrounding kind of like, and we don't tend to like linger on bridges. I mean, sometimes you might stand there and be looking for the view, right? You're focusing on that. And maybe that's part of that experience of I'm looking ahead to where I'm going. And that helps me to not feel so like, oh, wow, I'm just here. But we are really astrologically in this very big shift that involves a lot of outer planets, and it's affecting us on the level, but you can just see all the manifestations around us of, like, the old world systems are deconstructing and making space for what's new, but everything new hasn't set into place, so we're really in this space in between.
So, I hate transitions. I probably shouldn't admit that as a spiritual teacher, but I often resist them. And then once I've made the transition, I feel like it's always so slow until the next step arises. I recently moved from New York City back to my hometown, and it's been a few years and I still feel like stuck in this limbo where I haven't quite arrived yet. So, is is discomfort a sign of being out of alignment, or is that just part of the process?
That's such a good question to ask at this time because I think particularly in spiritual, when we're trying to live life from a spiritual perspective, there's this big thing about stay in alignment, stay grounded. But changes happen. Sometimes they're big and unexpected. Sometimes we expect them, but they don't happen the way that we thought they would. And so we're used to this idea of like, I'm feeling disconnected or if I must get back into alignment, which is great. That's an idea of like staying grounded. But when everything around you is shifting and constantly changing, or there's certain circumstances over which you can't really settle into something until part of the situation is resolved, then having that feeling of being disconnected or confused doesn't necessarily mean you're out of alignment. In fact, you may be very much in alignment. I am really feeling this experience. I'm going to share a personal story with this. I just recently helped my youngest daughter and her partner moved from one apartment to another. And the process of moving took a couple of days. So it's really funny. When at one point we were like, get takeout from this one place, and the guy says, "Do you want utensils?" And I'm thinking, I'm like, did we move the forks? Should I? I said, just throw in a couple. We don't like to accumulate a lot of plastic, utensils and all that stuff. I'm like, I can't remember. I think the forks are still at the old apartment. We're eating lunch at the new apartment. I said, just throw in a few plastic forks. We don't need, anything else. So it's that, but in this process of moving, they, were leaving they weren't keeping the bed that they had, they were leaving that behind in the apartment, and they were bringing a bed that they had gotten into their new apartment, and they really wanted to sleep in the new apartment, but until they had the bed there, they couldn't really sleep there, right? So they're moving back and forth, and so this weird transition of, like, what do we leave behind while we're staying in the old apartment? And she's like, well, just leave the frying pan, leave this. How much do we take out of the fridge? What do you move? And for like 3 days, particularly the day in the middle, where like half the stuff is here and there, it was this very weird feeling of being sort of out of sync of like, I don't remember where everything is. She was like, I want to go up. Their old apartment had a hot tub on the roof, and she was really sorry. I want to go up to the hot tub. I can't. I go, watch because my bathing suit's packed with all my other stuff. It's in the other apartment, which is 20 minutes away, and it's 10 o'clock at night. And, so that sense of feeling disconnected is a reality. It doesn't necessarily mean you're out of alignment, but it is also something to pay attention to. What can you do to help yourself feel more grounded, more to feel more comfortable in the discomfort, if that makes sense? So for them, on that second, the end of the first thing they did the following morning was, let's get the mattress to the new place so that we know that no matter what, we can sleep here. And then they felt more settled in there. It really began to feel, they also moved their couch there. So they felt more like we have a place to sit. And we moved everything from the kitchen that day too. So we knew where we could eat. So what are the things that's a very concrete example, but if you're in a situation we don't really know everything about what's coming at us. The big change, so many systems are shifting and changing in global systems and personal systems, family dynamics. I know a lot of people with big relationship changes in the last year and a half, and you're in that in between space. I have a friend who just recently found out that she's going to be divorced, and she's like, "Whoa, this was not." Kind of knew it was coming, but not really. And so this feeling of like, what can I do to feel more grounded? What can I do to feel comfortable? What do I need that will bring me comfort? John, we always joke about, set up your blanket fort and crawl in there with a good book in your, you know, or your favorite Netflix. Yeah, tune out, watch your favorite Netflix series for like an episode or two. And just I have this weird thing I do when I get really, really out of whack. I listen to my youngest daughter's studying geology. She's getting a PhD in geology. And I asked her all these questions. She goes, Mom, follow this geologist on YouTube. He will answer your question. Not like he doesn't want to answer my question, but I have found that listening to these geologists, rocks don't move a lot. Sometimes they do, but very slowly. They all tend to have very sort of quiet, soft demeanors, something about them. I listen to geology videos and it makes so much sense. And we're talking about very slow moving time frames and geological decades. And I just feel like, okay, there's order in the world. So that's what I do. I listen to geology videos. So find that thing that for you, breath work is a great thing for the moment. Find that thing that would help you. So, John, what do you think is something? What's an example? What's your geology video?
Well,
Listen.
I mean, definitely the blanket fort. I call it cocooning. I will surely take to rest and restore. I think the more uneasy I feel in these moments of transition, the more time I take to recover. And I'll stretch, I'll do body work, definitely connect to my breath, and just kind of cozying into a blanket or a cocoon with a book or a spiritual podcast surely like helps me feel calm and restored.
Yeah. And I think that I love that concept of cocooning because the other thing is that it's like, I know people use this analogy all the time, but we talk about the transformation of the butterfly, of the caterpillar into the butterfly or the moth. I try to give moths equal time because they too do the cocoons, right? And there's this incredible process that happens where literally the worm like dissolves into this, you know, goo of stuff that's going to become the butterfly or the moth. I recently found out something very interesting about that. We all think, oh, what a beautiful process. I recently found out that actually, while that's happening, while the cells are transforming and changing, there's a certain period where I can't remember if the butterfly cells are trying to destroy the moth cell or the caterpillar. It's like they're kind of like fighting for each other. They're kind of like consuming. Like I think the new cells, the butterfly moth cells, actually consume the moth cells. And that's becomes the fuel and the DNA. That's how the cells actually transform. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of a really intense, rather more volatile, like cannibalistic experience. You think there's this beautiful, peaceful transition, but think about it. We're in this messy middle. And, there are times when I feel like there are parts of myself who are like under attack, and it's like from me or with the outside world. So the concept of cocooning and allowing yourself to be in the sacred space, to be in this sacred time I mean, you do have to function. If you've got to get up and go into, if there's a day where you just can't deal with work, you call in sick for a day, but not for a month. If you're a parent, you've got little kids or even teenagers, whatever, you've got responsibilities, you can't tell the kids, oh, go take care of yourself, drive yourselves to school. You have certain things you have to fulfill, but then maybe give yourself more space and more time to cocoon, to shelter, to come back to self, to allow yourself to process. And the important thing about that gestational period is feeling all the feels, letting the process happen, understanding this is confusing, this is upsetting. My both of my daughters, they're older, they're on their own, they're on their life path, but as someone who worries, like, what is this world going to be like for them, particularly as women? What is happening? And not to get stuck in that mindset, but also not to bury it, because the things that we bury are going to keep coming back. And part of this liminal space is saying, what are the ankle weights that are holding you back? What are the things that have walled off your heart? Because approaching the experience of exiting this liminal space into this new beautiful creation that it's going to take a while. It's not going to be like we open the door, there it is, it's beautiful, like a change of scenery, and the curtain drops and then boom, it comes up and it's all wonderful. It's a process, but really all the guides, all the people that I follow, all the indications, even the data of numbers of where people are, is that there is this belief of wanting to create a world that is more exclusive, that it is more in harmonious with each other, with nature, with the rhythms of the planet. It's out there. It's just going to take a while. So remembering to get into that space, that cocooning, that sacred space, give yourself the time you need as often as you need and more time than usual. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's not because you're not spiritual. It's not because your yoga practice or meditation practice isn't working. It's because the intensity of what we're dealing with is so strong now. So we may need to up that. We may need to ramp that. And so allowing yourself to be in that space more often and to really feel all of that, so that being in that sacred space, to allow yourself to clear everything out that you don't want to carry forward with you, in my videos that I post on my channel all the time, I'm always saying this, like every full moon release, let this go, let it go. But this is like a really big letting go. It's like I again back to the analogy of my daughter moving from one apartment to the other. She said, the last time we moved, I just threw everything in boxes and said I'll sort it out when I get here, and I never did. This time, I'm not taking anything with me that I don't want in the new apartment, and set up a big box. I'm just going to put everything in there and donate it. Get rid of that. That is the analogy. Don't take anything forward. And it's just being aware of, you know, also holding space, holding that vision. So for you, John, what is one aspect, one simple thing that you are yearning to experience when we reach the other side of this liminal bridge that we're on?
For me, I've felt like I'm treading water during this transition. So for me, feeling firmly planted and at peace with where I'm at. I feel like I'm juggling so many projects that are either just beginning or partway through, and none of them have really flourished yet or been completed. So for me, having those checks kind of officially marked off my to-do list and physical products in my hand and feeling that sense of achievement and grounding will be will be pivotal for me. I do love though the invitation that you've offered for us to feel at peace with our discomfort and for us to accept it and not to resist it. Because, especially as a spiritual teacher or someone who works with clients and advises them, we often feel like we have to be the gold standard and perfect, and I often am hypercritical of my own behavior and when I'm feeling drained or exhausted. So I love that offer you've made for us to be human and to accept our emotions and to be okay with them.
It's so important because the thing is, many of those emotions are really survival techniques. When yeah, remember my daughters when they were little, I would get kind of grumpy and they would go, "Mommy, do you need a snack?" And I would be like, "Yeah, I'm actually," and because I'm feeling kind of itchy, kind of hangry. Of course they would get a snack too, but they were so tuned into that. My daughters and I are very food oriented anyway. But I was like, "Yes, let's get a snack. What should we get? Let's get ice cream." And I'd be like, "Okay." So but tuning into that, and because if it builds up, it builds up. And if I was like, no, I'm fine, we don't have time for a snack, and then I'm going to get angry, and then one of the kids is going to like, drop their, little stuffed animal, pick that up. You should keep it, then you lose it because it just builds and it builds. And then you have this reaction because everything is just energy. Love, fear, and frustration and joy. It's all energy. It's energy of like John, for you, different colors, different tones. Anger may feel like this, and joy may be a different shade of that. But it's all just energy. But the energy builds up. I mean, it can happen with joy and excitement too. Little kids sometimes get overly. It's a Christmas morning, right? Or the build up before Christmas or their birthday, and they have a meltdown, like a tantrum, like the day before, because there's just so much excitement. And if you let it all build up, it's got to go somewhere. You can only hold your breath for so long. Think about your emotions and your feelings in that same way. You can only hold it in for so long. Better to express it and let it out. And if you're really feeling that intent, really intensity, do some big physical activity. You know, Furniture, go for a walk, take your dog for a walk, do exercises to really fully release it because it's all just a lot of it is coming from survival. It's the worry, the anxiety, it's I'm trying to keep you safe. I do a particular type of therapy in my therapy practice with the therapist that I work with called IFS, internal family systems. It's basically this idea that there are these various parts of you. There's an inner critic, there's a there's an inner fire. There's a first responder who's like, emergency, emergency, this is
Have
danger.
you read Gabrielle Bernstein's new book?
No, no.
It's self-help and it's all about this technique. I haven't
Oh,
read it yet, but
okay. I'm gonna have to check that one. But yeah, but I've done a couple workshops in it, and then and found a therapist who does practice this, and it's really helpful. And sometimes we have meetings and we sit down and talk to it. It's like, okay, what does this, when your fear is speaking, or the anxiety, sit down as if it's like you can give it a persona, or like some people embody it as an animal. You sit down and have a conversation. What are you trying to tell me? Okay, okay, worry, great, that's great. Let's, you are really helpful. This, we don't need to worry about this. Let's worry about this. Can you focus on and pay attention to this? Like when we talk about a friend of mine who's an excellent dog trainer, you don't ever get rid of an unwanted behavior, you have to replace it. So those parts of ourselves that have these like feelings that are sometimes just, that are often just, uncomfortable, and disruptive, we can't just lock them away or heal them or raise the vibration. Fear is fear. It's there for a reason. It's kept us alive for to evolve through all of this. But when it becomes debilitating or it clouds our judgment, we need to hear what it's saying and understand that it's not something to eliminate or get rid of. It's something to understand and almost collaborate with.
that's interesting. It reminds me of Abraham Hicks, how um they have their like rampages. And when you're mentioning about having the energy just kind of snowball into something greater, like stubbing your toe leads to your grocery bag breaking, which leads to like a car accident, and you just have all of this bad energy building up when we're just connecting to the fear and the anxiety. We can just as easily connect to the peace and the love and the prosperity, just one little step at a time, one little breadcrumb at a time, by slowing down, taking a breath, and then reconnecting our focus.
The thing that it speaks to is that fear that we're going to get stuck there. What if the world doesn't get better, then I'm always going to feel anxious. Or if this situation isn't resolved, then I'm always going to be, stuck in this feeling. And that's the thing. And we don't realize that by like holding on to it, we're actually creating the stuckness, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, you're not stuck, you're shifting. And that concludes episode 1 of season 2 of Cosmic Waves. Next episode, we're going to be talking about energetic discernment, choosing what beliefs to carry forward and which ones to let go.
That's gonna help with that shift. So stay tuned. We'll see
Awesome.
you all the next episode. Bye.